vSphere data protection deployment. The vSphere data protection appliance is deployed using an OVF file. So once we deploy this, we'll need to connect over with the browser to the configuration utility. Here we'll perform our initial configuration on the appliance. Okay, so we'll connect over to the IP address that we assigned to the appliance during installation or setup. We'll need to go to port 8543 / VDP-configure. So once we get there, we can configure our initial stuff like our host name, IP address, DNS servers, and we can also integrate our vCenter server in here too. At the install mode wizard, we can also run a performance test on our storage to determine that our vSphere data protection storage meets or exceed our performance requirements for storing of virtual machines. Okay, so after the initial configuration completes and we restart our appliance from there, the appliance would then run in what is called a maintenance mode. So in maintenance mode, we can perform simple tasks on the appliance like starting and stopping of services, collecting logs, and upgrading the appliance. At this point also, we would see the vSphere Data Protection plugin added to our vSphere web client. Okay, so let me pull up my vSphere web client here and let's deploy the OVA for vSphere Data Protection. So I have my vSphere web client here. Before we continue here, let me just pull up VMware workstation. So basically what I have in my infrastructure here is my DNS server. So this is at my DNS here. I have my vCenter server appliance deployed, and I have one host added to that appliance. Okay, so we are going to deploy our vSphere data protection appliance on ESXi 5. What I did before I continue, let me just pull up my DNS console here. So I set up my forward and reverse files here, my host files. So I have ESXi 5, I have that configure. I have my vCenter server appliance configure here too in DNS. And also I created a record for my VDP or the appliance, the vSphere Data Protection appliance. So this is it here. So this is the IP address we will be assigning to the appliance, .167. Alright, so let me just pull up back my web client. So I'll go over to host 5 and deploy that OVA. That, come over here, and then I'll deploy my OVF template here. I'll just browse to where I have the OVF file store and just hit on next here. Notice we're deploying 6.1 of the vSphere Data Protection appliance. Publisher, if you notice here, as I mentioned, this is based on EMC Alphamar. If we're deploying as a thick disk, we'll be utilizing approximately 200 gigs. For thin disk, we'll be using 11.6 gigs here of storage. Okay, so let me continue. This is in addition to the actual storage space that we'll put aside for VM, for our VM backups. We'll configure that in a little bit. So let me just continue here. I'll accept the end user license agreement here, hit on next. I'll just give this a name. I want to call this vSphere data protection. So let's just call this VDP. I'm deploying this in data center 1. Okay, so here I'll choose 10 provisioning and just continue. Ideally, you'd want to set this up on some sort of shared storage. Okay, I'm just deploying this locally on this ESXi host. So I'll just hit on next here. I'll leave the default source and destination network here and just hit on next. Okay, so here is where I'll enter my IP configurations for this appliance. So I'll enter my gateway IP here. And then I'll point this to my DNS server. Next, this would be the IP address for this appliance. Recall we're using 167. And then the net mask for this. So let me just double check this here. Gateway seems okay there. DNS server, appliance IP. No. Okay, so I have a little summary here. I'll just want to select this to power on after deployment, and I'll just hit on finish here. This particular OVA is quite big. It's over 5 gigs. So what I'll do is let this run for a little bit, and once this is completed, we'll continue from there. Okay, so this is completed here. It took approximately 9 or 10 minutes. So I'll just go over to my appliance now. This is what we would have just deployed. And I'll just pull up the console for this. Okay, so we have our appliance up and running now. So what I'll do is just connect over to this address here, and then we can do our initial configuration on this appliance. So let me just go over here. Okay, so once we have DNS configured proper in our environment, we should be able to just connect to the host name here. So this is a record I created, VDP, in lab.local domain. This is the port and VDP-configure. So just hit an enter here. Just proceed. Okay, so the default username here is root, and the default password is change me. So I'll just enter that. CHANGEME. Okay, so this is a one-time wizard. We wouldn't see back this wizard once we have configured this initially. Okay, so I'll just go ahead now and just go through this really fast. Okay, so this is the default network information we would have entered during the OVA deployment. So I'll just hit on next here. Time zone, let me just select my time zone here. And then I'll create a new password for the appliance. So just configure that and confirm it, and then I'll just hit on next. So this is where I'll register my vCenter server. So username, I need to enter administrator. at vSphere.local, and then enter my password for my environment here. This is the address for my vCenter server, so this is at vcsa.local, leave the default port, and then I could do a test on the connection here. So this is successful. I'll just hit on next to continue. Okay, so here I have the option of selecting the capacity for our backups. So half of a terabyte, 1 TB, 2. I could select 4 TB, 6, and 8. Okay, so in my environment, I'll just leave this to the default. Also, if we already had the VDP storage, what we could have done is just deploy another appliance and attach the existing storage. Let's just say our appliance got corrupted, for example. So we could just deploy a new one and attach the existing storage here. Okay, and if we are doing a VDP migration, this is where we'll do that. So let me just go ahead, hit on next. Okay, and I need this to be, for VDP storage, I need this to be thin provisioning too. And then I'll just hit on next here. Okay, so this appliance will be configured with 4 vCPU and 4 gigs of memory. Or basically, this is the minimum that we'll need to run this. So let me just hit on next here. I will just skip this for now. Here's where we can run the performance test on our storage. This should take around 30 minutes. I'm just going to skip over this for now. I'll just hit on next. Okay, and I'll just select yes here. So this would start the storage configuration. Okay, so this should take a minute or so. Once this is completed, I'll restart the appliance, and we should see the add-in added to our vSphere web client once we reboot this. So just hit on restart now, and this should take like a minute or two to come up back. Okay, so now that the appliance has finished rebooting, let's just go back to the address here. I'll enter my new password that I set up earlier. As you'll see now, we're no longer presented with the initial configuration wizard. We just have a few tabs with a couple options here that we can go through. We have a little bit of information on the VDP appliance. The host is deployed on here. We have our services here. We could manage, stop or start them over on the right. So we have some information on storage, a little summary on the data store capacity. We could also perform the analysis here. So let's just move on here. This is where we can do a rollback of the VDP appliance. If we were upgrading the appliance, we could do that there. If we need to do an emergency restore, we could do it from here. And this is where we'll configure our login. We could download our logs here too, down at the bottom. And then the final tab here is if we are migrating to the EMC Alphamar product, we can do that from here. So once I hit edit, migrate here, I'll have the option of migrating our VDP over to EMC Alphamar. So I'll just close this out now. What we should see under our vSphere web client now, let me just refresh here. We should be able to see the VDP plugin added. So let me just go to home. So it's not added here as yet. So what I'll do is just restart this vCenter server. Once this is restarted, we should be able to see the plugin over on the left here. So let me just restart this appliance really fast. So once this comes up back, we should see a new plugin over on the left for vSphere data protection. So let's just pause this and I'll continue once this has rebooted. Okay, so let me just log into my vSphere web client here really fast. Okay, so over on the left here, in our inventory list, we should see a vSphere data protection now deployed. We could also access this from our inventory here at the home. So I'll just click on that. To start with, I'll just need to connect it to the VDP appliance. So I'll just hit and connect there. As I would have mentioned previously, the VDP is powered by EMC, or based on the EMC Alphamar. So this is where we'll be working throughout the first part of this course. So this is where we'll create our backup jobs, do a restore. This is where we'll set up replication. We have our reports here, and then we have some basic configuration like email and login here. Okay. So as we progress throughout this course, we'll get back to these here in detail. Also, we could download our application backup client to install on Exchange or SharePoint or SQL server. All right. So as we progress, we'll come back to this. We'll start with backup. So in our next module, we'll get into backup and creating our backup jobs, and then we'll progress from there.